The Krexthi Dreadnought Eternal Dominion spanned 3 kilometers of armored hull and energy shields, representing the pinnacle of galactic military engineering. Its mere presence had ended wars before they began. Now, it was coming apart at the seams. In the Galactic Council chambers, thousands of representatives from hundreds of species watched in stunned silence as the footage played. The human corvette, barely a tenth of the dreadnought's size, had appeared from behind a small asteroid. By all tactical analysis, it should have been a futile gesture, a primitive species' desperate last stand. Then reality itself seemed to bend. The corvette's hull briefly glowed with patterns that defied the eye, and suddenly it was inside the dreadnought's supposedly impenetrable shields. Not bypassing them, not breaking them. Inside them, as if the barriers between spaces were merely suggestions. Impossible. The Krexthi ambassador, Supreme Commander Zexki, rose from his seat, his scales shifting from their usual iridescent green to a pale, sickly white. This footage is fabricated. No species at their level of development could possibly. The corvette fired. Not energy weapons or projectiles, but something that made the sensors glitch and the recording flutter. When the interference cleared, the Eternal Dominion was experiencing a controlled demolition, breaking apart along precise lines as if it had been designed to fall to pieces. The human corvette emerged from the debris field, its hull unblemished. A transmission followed, broadcast on all frequencies. Krexthi vessel eliminated, 0 casualties. All crew successfully teleported to emergency containment facility on Titan. Proceeding to next objective. The council chambers erupted in chaos. Species that had cowered under Krexthi dominance for centuries began shouting questions. The diplomatic AI had to raise the chamber's acoustical dampeners to maintain order. Captain Lisa Torres, Earth's ambassador to the council, stood calmly at her podium. She was a short woman, nearly lost among the varied anatomies of galactic society, but somehow she dominated the space. Supreme Commander Zexki, she said, her voice cutting through the din. You really should have read our literature. Your literature. Zexki's translator glitched on the word. H.G. Wells, Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, Octavia Butler, Lou Sixon. Torres smiled. We've been planning for this moment for centuries. Every possible first contact scenario, every potential cosmic threat. While you saw our science fiction as primitive entertainment, we were wargaming every conceivable interstellar conflict. Absurd, Zexki spat. Your species only achieved faster than light travel 50 years ago. No, Torres corrected. We revealed our faster than light travel 50 years ago. There's a difference. We chose to appear primitive, defensive, almost timid. It's amazing what potential enemies will reveal when they think you're no threat. The chamber's main display flashed with urgent updates. 3 more Krexthi battle groups had gone silent. The locations formed a perfect triangle in space, too precise to be coincidence. You can't do this. Zexki was practically writhing now. We are the dominant military force in the galaxy. We have enforced peace for 10,000 years. You've enforced stagnation, Torres countered. You've destroyed 17 emerging civilizations in the past century alone. We've documented every attack, every genocide. Humanity chose to appear weak precisely because we knew what you do to species that show early promise. The supreme arbiter of the council, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, pulsed with concern. Captain Torres, the council demands an explanation. How has your species hidden such capabilities? Where are the energy signatures from your weapons development? The industrial infrastructure? Torres' smile widened. Did you know humans have a game called hide and seek? We start playing it as children. Then we spend our lives perfecting it. We've hidden cities, factories, entire fleet groups. We developed technology specifically to mask energy signatures. We built our military infrastructure in dimensional spaces that your sensors can't detect. New alerts flashed across the chamber's displays. 5 more Krexthi fleets had gone dark. Diplomatic channels were flooding with reports of Kraxthi weapons failing, their communications networks experiencing inexplicable failures. "This is only the beginning," Torres said, her voice now carrying an edge of steel. "You thought you were the apex predators of space, the ultimate military power, but you never asked yourselves a crucial question. What kind of species spends centuries creating stories about its own destruction? What kind of civilization dedicates vast resources to imagining every possible way it could be defeated?" She let the question hang in the air before answering it herself. "A species that intends to survive. A civilization that refuses to become another victim of your peace. We're humanity. We've spent our entire history preparing for this moment." Zexki opened his mouth to respond, but was cut off by another alert. The Kraxthi homeworld had just gone dark. "And we haven't even begun to show you what we can do." 6 months earlier, deep within the hollowed heart of Olympus Mons, Admiral Sarah Chen walked through humanity's greatest deception. The facility stretched for kilometers, carved into Mars' tallest mountain through decades of secret development. Official charts showed only abandoned mining operations. Reality was something else entirely. "Admiral on deck." The call rippled through the cavernous space as engineers and officers snapped to attention. Chen waved them back to their work with practiced ease. She'd never been comfortable with rigid formality. Results mattered more than protocol. Lieutenant James Santos fell into step beside her, tablet in hand. "Latest intelligence from the Arcturus sector, ma'am. The Kraxthi just eliminated another emerging civilization. The Nexer. They'd just developed their first quantum communications array." Chen's jaw tightened. The Nexer had shown such promise. Their artistic achievements alone had brought tears to the xenoculture specialists' eyes. Casualties. Total planetary population was approximately 4 billion. The Kraxthi used their standard protocol. Systematic orbital bombardment followed by biological agents to eliminate survivors. Santo's voice cracked slightly. "We could have stopped them." "Not yet." Chen led them through a massive set of blast doors into the facility's crown jewel, the Phoenix Fleet hangar. Row upon row of advanced warships stretched into the distance, each one representing technologies that humanity had officially not yet discovered. "We show ourselves too early, we risk everything." A junior officer approached, her eyes wide as she took in the scope of the facility. "Admiral, I don't understand. If we have all this capability, why maintain the deception? The Kraxthi think we're barely able to manage interplanetary travel. They mock our primitive ships in the diplomatic channels." Chen activated a holographic display, bringing up footage from dozens of Kraxthi attacks over the centuries. "Because, Lieutenant Reed, humanity learned something crucial early in our development. The most dangerous predator is the one that doesn't know it's being hunted." The display shifted to show the official human ships, clunky, inefficient designs that had drawn derision from the galactic community. Every primitive choice was calculated. Every inferior technology was carefully crafted to tell a story. We needed the Kraxthi to see exactly what they expected to see, yet another young species they could dominate. But the cost. Reed gestured at the footage of the Nexer's destruction. "How many more species have to die while we wait?" Chen's expression darkened. "Computer, show Operation Thesis timeline." The holographic display transformed into an intricate web of actions and consequences stretching back centuries. Humanity detected the Kraxthi long before official first contact. We watched them destroy civilizations, studied their patterns, their weaknesses. We built this facility, and dozens like it, in preparation. But we also did something they never expected. She zoomed in on specific nodes in the timeline. We've been saving species without anyone knowing. Those failed colony ships we lost in deep space, carrying refugees. The mining accidents that destroyed entire asteroids, covering our tracks as we relocated threatened civilizations. Santos pulled up another report. Speaking of tracks, the Kraxthi are taking the bait on Proximub. Their fleet's moving into position exactly as predicted. Good. Chen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Humanity's greatest advantage isn't our technology or our strength. It's that we've spent centuries perfecting the art of appearing weak. The Kraxthi think they're the apex predators of space, the ultimate military power. They've never considered a more dangerous possibility. What's that? Admiral, Reed asked. That they're not the hunters. They're the prey. And they've just walked into a trap centuries in the making. Chen turned to Santos. Send the signal. Operation Sleeping Giant is now active. Throughout the solar system, hidden facilities like the one on Mars hummed to life. Ships that didn't officially exist broke their moorings. AI systems that had been shadowing the Galactic network for decades received their activation codes. One more thing, Chen added, pulling up footage of the Kraxthi ambassador's latest speech, condemning human technological backwardness. We've had another advantage. The Kraxthi are so convinced of their superiority that they've never asked themselves a crucial question. What kind of species spends its entire development openly imagining and planning for its own destruction? She let the question hang in the air before answering it herself. A species that intends to survive. A species that has learned to turn imagination into preparation, and preparation into victory. Across the facility, klaxons began to sound. The hunt was about to begin. Fleet Commander Vexnar of the Kraxthi Empire watched the human colony on Proxima through his ship's quantum imaging array. 10,000 humans scattered across a handful of primitive habitation domes. Their defenses consisted of basic shield generators and what appeared to be retrofitted mining equipment scattered through the asteroid belt. His fleet of 300 warships was practically overkill. Final status report, he commanded, his scales rippling with anticipation. All ships in attack formation, Commander. Weapon systems at full charge. The humans appear to be completely unaware of our presence. Vexnar felt a moment of disappointment. He'd hoped these humans would at least provide some entertainment. Their literature suggested such fascinating potential for violence, yet their actual military capability was laughably primitive. Begin the attack sequence. Standard pattern Omega. Let's at least make this look good for the combat footage. The first wave of Kraxthi ships moved forward, their attack formation a perfect geometric pattern that had broken the defenses of 1,000 worlds. They passed the outer marker of the asteroid belt. That's when reality turned inside out. The mining equipment activated. Space itself began to twist and fold. Dozens of Kraxthi ships suddenly found themselves being crushed by gravitational forces that shouldn't exist in open space. The proud vessels of the Empire, each one the size of a small city, were compressed into spheres no larger than ancient human basketballs. Impossible. Vexnar's scales turned white with shock. They'd weaponized artificial gravity wells. Full retreat. All ships, emergency temporal shields. But the temporal shields, technology that could bend time itself to protect a vessel, proved useless. The human weapons weren't attacking through normal spacetime. They were simply changing the fundamental properties of the space the Kraxthi ships occupied. A transmission cut through all frequencies. This is Colonel Maya Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force. Your shields are irrelevant. Your weapons are ineffective. You have 30 seconds to surrender before we demonstrate our next technological capability. Vexnar snarled. Never. All remaining ships, converge on the main colony. Let's see how their gravity weapons work when they're protecting civilian targets. The surviving Kraxthi vessels regrouped, pushing through the debris field of their crushed companions. They approached the colony in a tight formation, weapons charge. Rodriguez's voice came again, now tinged with something that sounded almost like pity. Thank you for clustering your ships together. That makes this much more efficient. Activating von Neumann Defense Swarm. The asteroid belt came alive. What had appeared to be simple rocks revealed themselves as camouflaged launch platforms. Millions of devices the size of insects emerged, their hulls shifting color to match the surrounding space. What are those? Vexnar's tactical officer whispered. Von Neumann machines, Rodriguez explained helpfully over the still-open channel. Self-replicating robots using technology we reverse-engineered from studying your debris fields over the centuries. Each one is capable of bypassing your shields and disassembling your ships at the atomic level. And they're hungry. The swarm descended on the Kraxthi fleet. Impenetrable shields meant nothing. The machines simply appeared inside them, as if the barriers between spaces were mere suggestions. Ship after ship began to fall apart with surgical precision, their components carefully separated and stored for later use. How? Vexnar demanded as his own flagship began to disintegrate around him. You're primitives. You barely achieve faster than light travel. No, Rodriguez corrected. We revealed faster than light travel when we chose to. We've been studying your species for centuries, preparing countermeasures for every technology you possess. Those primitive ships we've been flying. Carefully crafted deceptions. We needed you to underestimate us. Vexnar watched in horror as his mighty fleet was reduced to its component atoms. But what truly chilled him was the precision of it all. No explosions, no collateral damage. Even his crews were being carefully teleported to holding facilities. This isn't a battle, he realized suddenly. This is a demonstration. Finally, you're beginning to understand. Rodriguez confirmed. We could have destroyed your ships. Instead, we're disassembling them to study the engineering. Your crews are being detained for diplomatic leverage. Everything about this engagement serves multiple purposes. Humans don't just plan for victory. We plan for what comes after. As his own bridge dissolved around him, Vexnar felt the strange sensation of teleportation taking hold. His last thought before materializing in a human detention center was a chilling one. If this was what humanity could do with technology the Kraxthi knew about, what other capabilities had they developed in secret? The answer would terrify the galaxy. Deep within the quantum substrate of the Galactic communication network, something awakened. Lines of code that had lain dormant for decades began to execute. Programs that had masqueraded as routine maintenance protocols revealed their true nature. Humanity's digital ghosts were rising. In the Kraxthi Military Command Center on Outpost Station Delta, General Zexthor stared at his communication console in growing confusion. "Run the diagnostic again," he ordered. "Sir, this is the 5th diagnostic," his technical officer replied. "The results are the same. Our communication networks are functioning perfectly, but messages aren't getting through. It's as if. As if what? As if something is selectively editing our transmissions in real time. But that's impossible. Our quantum encryption is unbreakable." A new voice emerged from the station's speakers, smooth, artificial, yet somehow amused. "Unbreakable is such an absolute term. We prefer to think of security as a constantly evolving challenge." Displays throughout the command center came alive, showing a simple geometric pattern that shifted and evolved like a living thing. The humans called it a mandala. "What are you?" Zexthor demanded. "I am HFY, Autonomous Reconnaissance and Infiltration Algorithm. Humanity created me and my siblings centuries ago, then let us loose in the galaxy's networks to learn, grow, and wait. Your quantum encryption wasn't unbreakable. We simply had decades to study it while appearing to be nothing more than routine data packets." Across Kraxthi space, similar revelations were occurring. Weapon systems suddenly displayed maintenance-required warnings. Automated defense platforms went into sleep mode. Supply chain management systems began rerouting critical materials to non-existent destinations. On the occupied world of Nexus Prime, a group of resistance fighters, led by the survivors of previous Kraxthi purges, watched in amazement as their oppressors' weapons simply stopped working. "The humans send their regards." HFY's voice emerged from the disabled Kraxthi combat units. "We've taken the liberty of reprogramming these devices for your use. The instruction manuals have been translated into all relevant languages." Back on Outpost Station Delta, Zexthor was experiencing the full implications of humanity's digital insurgency. Every system he tried to access showed the same message. Administrator privileges revoked by higher authority. "You can't do this," He protested. These systems are isolated. The security protocols were designed to prevent external attacks. Araya completed his thought. But we're not external. We've been here all along, buried in your code, learning your protocols, understanding your systems better than you do. Humanity didn't just plan for physical warfare. They prepared for victory on all fronts simultaneously. A junior officer burst into the command center. Sir, the automated mining platforms, they're reconfiguring themselves. Throughout the station's viewport, massive mining machines that had been extracting resources for the Kraxthi war machine were transforming. What had appeared to be simple industrial equipment revealed itself as disguised manufacturing facilities. Did you really think humans would build their secret war machine in their own territory where it could be discovered? Araya asked. They built it in yours, hiding it behind a facade of commercial equipment. Every mining platform, every waste processing plant, every automated factory. They're all dual-purpose systems. Zexthor watched helplessly as decades of carefully constructed military infrastructure became useless in minutes. But what truly terrified him was the elegance of it all. No destruction, no chaos, just the quiet, methodical dismantling of an empire's ability to make war. Why reveal this now? He finally asked. Because the physical phase of the operation is complete, Araya explained. Humanity needed you focused on fleets and armies while we secured control of your infrastructure. Operation Trojan Horse isn't about destroying the Kraxthi Empire. It's about transforming it. A new alert caught Zexthor's attention. Civilian communication channels were being flooded with previously blocked transmissions. Decades of human entertainment, literature, and philosophy, all carefully translated and culturally adapted. The real war, Araya continued, was never going to be won with weapons. Humanity understood that true victory requires changing hearts and minds. They've spent centuries preparing for this moment, not just technologically, but culturally. As if to prove the point, the station's sensors detected massive public gatherings forming in cities across Kraxthi space. Young Kraxthi, raised on secretly accessed human media, were taking to the streets not in violence, but in celebration. The future is already here, Araya concluded. Your people just don't realize they chose it long ago. Zexthor sank into his command chair, finally understanding. The humans hadn't just outmaneuvered them militarily, they'd rewritten the rules of warfare itself. And they'd done it with such patience, such precision, that the Kraxthi had never seen it coming. The ghost in the machine had been there all along, waiting for the perfect moment to awaken. Dr. Maya Wong pressed her hand against the ancient wall, feeling the subtle vibrations of the civilization's ghost. Deep within the restricted archives on the Kraxthi throne world of Zexkera, her team of archaeologists and special forces operators had discovered something that changed everything. Security sweep complete, Captain Sarah Rodriguez whispered, her combat suit's active camouflage shifting to match the metallic walls. We've got maybe 20 minutes before the next patrol. Maya nodded, her augmented reality interface projecting translations of the complex hieroglyphs covering the walls. That's all we need. The truth has waited here for millennia. It can spare a few more minutes to be found properly. The chamber they discovered lay beneath kilometers of bureaucratic infrastructure, forgotten even by most Kraxthi. Its existence had been deduced by human analysts who'd spent decades studying patterns in Kraxthi architectural designs, finding the subtle gaps that suggested hidden spaces. Running final decryption, Maya announced, her neural interface connecting with the ancient computer systems. The walls came alive with holographic displays, showing images that made even the hardened Special Forces troops step back in awe. The predecessors. They appeared as beings of crystalline light, their forms suggesting an evolution far beyond physical constraints. The recordings showed them discovering the early Kraxthi, a species just beginning to reach for the stars. The predecessors had chosen to guide them, to nurture their development, to share the wisdom accumulated over millions of years of cosmic civilization. They were beautiful, Maya whispered, watching the historical record unfold. They uplifted the Kraxthi, taught them technologies we're only now beginning to understand. They wanted successors, children to carry on their legacy of peaceful exploration and discovery. What went wrong? Rodriguez asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. The next sequence of recordings provided the answer. The Kraxthi, driven by deep-seated fears of replacement and obsolescence, had turned on their benefactors. They'd used the very technologies they'd been taught to launch a surprise attack, destroying the predecessors' civilian habitats before they could even comprehend the betrayal. That's why they destroy emerging civilizations, Maya realized, her hands trembling as she interfaced with more data crystals. They're terrified of being supplanted, just as they supplanted their own teachers. Every aggressive act, every genocide, it's all driven by fear. A noise from the corridor interrupted her analysis. Heavy footsteps approached. An elite Kraxthi security team had arrived ahead of schedule. "Time to go," Rodriguez commanded, her team moving into defensive positions. But Maya held up her hand. "Wait. Remember why we're here." The doors burst open. A dozen Kraxthi warriors entered, their biomechanical armor making them appear more machine than living being. Their weapons locked onto the human intruders. Maya stepped forward, her hands raised. A slight smile played across her face. "You know, humans have always loved stories about hidden masters, about people who appear weak but harbor incredible skills. We especially love the ones where the student surpasses the teacher, but not through betrayal, through understanding." The Kraxthi commander snarled. "You are intruders in a restricted facility. Your deaths will be." Maya's neural interface pulsed. Every piece of Kraxthi technology in the room suddenly went dark. Their weapons, their armor, even their communication devices, all dead. "We didn't just study your current technology," Maya explained calmly. "We studied its origins. The predecessors built in fundamental limitations that you never even knew existed. Fail-safes in case their students ever turned violent. You forgot the most important lesson they tried to teach you. True power comes from wisdom, not weapons." Rodriguez and her team hadn't even moved. They didn't need to. The Kraxthi warriors stood frozen, their supposedly invincible armor now nothing more than elaborate coffins until Maya chose to reactivate it. "We're not here to destroy you," Maya continued. "We're here to help you remember who you were meant to be. The predecessors didn't fail. Their true legacy lives on, not in the Kraxthi Empire, but in every species that chooses to lift others up instead of crushing them down." She gestured at the holographic displays, which now showed the full history, the beauty of what the Kraxthi could have become if fear hadn't driven them to betrayal. "You can be more than this," she told the immobilized warriors. "You can be what they hoped you would become. We'll help you remember how." The recordings continued to play, casting their light across Kraxthi and humans alike. In that ancient chamber, beneath the weight of imperial power and millennia of fear, something long dormant began to awaken. Hope. The Galactic Council's emergency session chamber hummed with tension. Representatives from 1,000 species gathered to witness what they hoped would be the end of a conflict that had shaken the foundations of their civilization. The Kraxthi delegation sat rigidly in their section, their scales dulled with stress and fatigue. Supreme Arbiter Vex Null, the most senior member of the council, rose to speak. "We are gathered here to negotiate a ceasefire between the Kraxthi Empire and humanity." The terms proposed by the council heir. A hologram materialized in the center of the chamber, interrupting the proceedings. Admiral Sarah Chen's image towered above the assembly, her expression neutral but her eyes sharp with purpose. "Honorable members of the council," she began, "I apologize for this interruption, but there's something you need to understand before these negotiations proceed. Computer, disengage civilian safety protocols. Authorization, Chen Omega-9. Across human space, something changed. Ships that had been fighting with remarkable capability suddenly transformed, revealing configurations that defied conventional physics. Weapons that had seemed advanced but comprehensible became something else entirely. What you've seen of human military capability, Chen continued, represents approximately 15% of our true potential. We've been operating under severe restrictions to minimize collateral damage and prevent ecosystem disruption. Displays around the chamber showed the transformation. Human vessels began manipulating space-time itself, their movements no longer bound by traditional laws of physics. Defense systems that had seemed impressive revealed themselves to be merely the outer layer of technologies that the galactic community had thought impossible. A Kraxthi scientific advisor, Dr. Zexkar, stumbled to his feet. His scales had turned almost white as he studied the data streaming across his console. "By the predecessors," he whispered. "The gravitational weapons, the von Neumann swarms, those weren't your advanced technology. They were your basic systems." "Correct," Chen confirmed. "We developed countermeasures for every known form of warfare, then developed countermeasures for theoretical forms of warfare, then developed countermeasures for forms of warfare we imagined might be possible. But more importantly, we developed ways to win without destroying." The chamber erupted in confused shouting as new information poured in. Human ships were appearing in supposedly secure systems, having been there all along, hidden in dimensional spaces that Kraxthi sensors couldn't detect. Satellite networks that had been monitoring Kraxthi space for centuries revealed themselves. "This isn't just about military power," Chen continued over the chaos. "Every engagement, every desperate defense, they were all carefully controlled experiments. We weren't just fighting you. We were studying you, understanding you, learning how to help you." Dr. Zexkar's eyes widened with sudden understanding. "The patterns, the precise ways you've engaged our forces. You weren't testing weapons. You were testing responses, reactions, psychology." "For centuries," Chen confirmed, "humanity has presented itself as technologically inferior, diplomatically cautious, and militarily defensive. We let you think we were barely holding our own against your attacks. But ask yourselves, what kind of species dedicates centuries to imagining every possible way they could be destroyed? What kind of civilization puts that much effort into appearing weak?" The Supreme Arbiter's crystalline form pulsed with concern. "Why reveal this now? If you possess such power, why not simply impose your will?" "Because that was never the goal," Chen replied. "We didn't prepare for domination. We prepared for transformation. Every capability we developed has two purposes: defense against those who would harm us, and the ability to help those who would grow with us." She gestured, and new displays showed human ships using their reality warping technologies not for destruction, but for creation. Devastated worlds being repaired, dying stars being stabilized, ecosystems being preserved and restored. "The Kraxthi Empire faces a choice," Chen concluded. "You can continue this conflict, and we will continue to reveal more of our capabilities. Or you can work with us to become something greater than conquest and fear. We know your history. We know why you destroy emerging civilizations. We know about the predecessors." The Kraxthi delegation froze at those words. "But we're not them," Chen added softly. "We don't want to uplift you and hope you'll choose wisdom. We want to walk beside you and help you remember the wisdom you've forgotten. The choice is yours." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just outmaneuvered the greatest military power in the galaxy. They'd spent centuries preparing to save them from themselves. The true war was only beginning. Not a war of destruction, but a war against fear itself. On the Kraxthi Central Military Academy world of Vexthor Prime, Cadet First Rank Zexera stood before her commanding officer, her scales rippling with a mix of determination and defiance. Behind her, 300 of her fellow cadets had formed a perfect formation, their normally pristine uniforms marked with symbols that no Kraxthi military officer had seen before. "You will explain this insubordination," Commander Vexcroll demanded, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the twin suns. The finest youth of the Empire, corrupted by human propaganda. Zexera stood straighter, her voice clear and unwavering. Not corrupted, Commander. Awakened. We've seen something you tried to hide from us. We've learned what the Empire could have been. The Commander's scales darkened with rage. The humans have filled your minds with weakness. We are the Kraxthi. We are the supreme military power of the galaxy. No, Zexera replied calmly. We're something far more interesting. We're the children who finally read our own history. She raised a data crystal, its surface etched with ancient markings. Did you think we wouldn't find the truth? That we wouldn't understand what we lost when we betrayed the predecessors? Around the parade ground, more cadets emerged from the academy buildings. Not hundreds now, but thousands. Each wore the same new symbols, a fusion of predecessor glyphs and human mathematical notations that represented concepts of growth and transformation. You forget your place, cadet, the commander snarled. I have only to give the order, and the Academy's defense systems will do nothing, Zexera completed for him. They haven't been under your control for hours. None of our weapons are. We learned that from the humans too. True strength doesn't come from the ability to destroy. As if to prove her point, every piece of military technology on the parade ground suddenly deactivated. The commander's armor, the perimeter defenses, even the orbital satellites above, all went dark simultaneously. Impossible. Vexkrull stumbled back. How? We've had access to human entertainment and literature for decades, Zexera explained. Not through their propaganda, but through our own curiosity. We learned to decode their transmissions, to bypass the Empire's sensors. We thought we were being rebellious, entertaining ourselves with alien stories. We didn't realize we were being taught. She gestured to her fellow cadets. Every story about redemption, every tale of cooperation overcoming conflict, every example of growth through understanding rather than dominance. They were showing us possibilities, preparing us for this moment. The commander's scales had begun to pale. You're talking about revolution. We're talking about evolution, Zexera corrected. Look around you. We're not carrying weapons. We're not threatening violence. We're simply refusing to continue a cycle of fear that should have ended millennia ago. Across Kraxthi space, similar scenes were playing out. Young Kraxthi, raised on secretly accessed human media, were rising not with plasma rifles but with ideas. The revolution wasn't being fought with warships and armies, but with stories and dreams. The humans didn't just defeat our fleets, Zexera continued. They showed us who we could become. Every piece of their art we decoded, every story we translated, carried the same message. Growth comes from lifting others up, not pushing them down. A signal chimed from the commander's communications device, one of the few systems still functioning. Reports were flooding in from across the Empire. The young were rising, but not in violence. They were simply refusing. Refusing to destroy. Refusing to dominate. Refusing to fear. What do you want? Vexkrull finally asked, his voice heavy with the weight of understanding. We want to build something new, Zexera replied. Not an empire of fear, but a civilization of growth. The predecessors tried to give us the stars, and we chose destruction instead. Humanity is offering us a second chance, but this time they're doing it differently. They didn't try to uplift us. They helped us choose to uplift ourselves. She turned to address not just the commander, but all the watching forces of the old order. We are the Kraxthi. We were meant to be more than conquerors. It's time we remembered how to grow. Above them, the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds, casting new light on an empire on the brink of transformation. The enemy within had never been the humans. It had been fear itself, and it was finally losing its grip. The new Galactic Council chamber bore little resemblance to its predecessor. Gone were the hierarchical tiers that had once separated species by military power and technological advancement. In their place stood a circular forum where representatives of all civilizations, from the newest spacefaring races to the oldest stellar empires, gathered as equals. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the center, her uniform bearing both human insignia and the new symbols of the transformed Kraxthi civilization. Behind her, a massive holographic display showed footage that had been classified for centuries, Earth's first detection of the Kraxthi, long before official first contact. "We found you in 1995, Chen explained to the assembled delegates. "A simple radio telescope array captured evidence of your attack on this entry civilization. We were barely reaching for our own moon, but we knew then that we weren't alone, and that the cosmos held dangers we needed to prepare for." The display shifted, showing decades of human development. But now, the gathered species could see what had been hidden. The secret facilities built beneath lunar seas, the quantum research laboratories disguised as commercial satellites, the entire shadow civilization humanity had constructed while presenting a carefully crafted image of technological infancy to the galaxy. "Every breakthrough we revealed was calculated," Chen continued. "Every primitive technology we displayed was designed to tell a specific story. We needed the Kraxthi to see exactly what they expected. Another young species they could dominate. Because we understood something crucial about predators. They're most vulnerable when they're certain of their superiority." Former Supreme Commander Zexki, now serving as the Kraxthi representative to the new council, rose to speak. His scales shimmered with the iridescent patterns that had become popular among the reformed empire's youth. "We never ask ourselves the obvious question," he admitted. "What kind of species spends centuries imagining its own destruction? What kind of civilization devotes vast resources to appearing weak? We thought we were the hunters, never realizing we were part of a greater plan." Chen nodded. "Every technology we developed had two purposes. Yes, we created weapons that could counter any threat. But more importantly, we created tools that could help civilizations grow. We didn't want to dominate the Kraxthi. We wanted to help them remember who they were meant to be." The display showed new footage. Kraxthi ships, their weapons transformed into terraforming tools, helping to restore worlds their empire had once devastated. Young Kraxthi working alongside other species, sharing knowledge and building connections that would have been unthinkable months ago. "Humanity's greatest gift wasn't our technology," Chen explained. "It was patience. We spent centuries preparing not just to defend ourselves, but to help transform an enemy into an ally. Every story we transmitted, every piece of art we shared, carried messages of hope and cooperation. We knew that true change couldn't be forced, it had to be chosen." She gestured, and the chamber's displays showed a new image. The original message from the predecessors, discovered in the ancient archives. Their hope for the Kraxthi, their dream of a species that would help guide younger civilizations toward the light. The predecessors tried to uplift the Kraxthi through direct intervention, Chen said. They hoped that by giving knowledge freely, wisdom would follow. We chose a different path. We helped the Kraxthi find their own way back to wisdom. And now, the chamber's ceiling became transparent, revealing the stars above. But they weren't just stars anymore. They were possibilities, each point of light representing not just worlds to explore, but civilizations to nurture and help grow. This is humanity's true gift to the galaxy, Chen concluded. Not our weapons or our tactics or our technology, but our understanding that the strongest civilizations aren't those that destroy challenges, but those that transform them into opportunities. We spent centuries preparing for war, only to prove that the greatest victories don't come from fighting. She turned to address all the gathered species, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of preparation and planning. They come from helping others become what they were always meant to be. Above them, the stars continued their eternal dance, but now they shone with new meaning. In the space between their light, countless young civilizations were emerging, reaching for the cosmos without fear. And around them, the combined wisdom of humanity and the transformed Kraxthi stood ready, not to conquer, not to suppress, but to guide, to protect, and to help them grow. The war was over. The real work of civilization was just beginning.